Welcome to Gin Clear Aviation. My name is Dan. I'd like to introduce you to my Cessna 182Q. I've recently just finished a total refurbishment of this aeroplane, and I'd like to take you on the journey and the thought process. A couple of years ago, I bought this 1979 Cessna 182Q. The previous owner of over 20 years had retired from flying and had kept the plane very clean and tidy, and had not changed the interior or any of the original instruments except for the addition of an ICOM 8.33 MHz radio and a Trig Mode S transponder. I was told everything worked as it should, and that this plane was a kind of barn find, all original and in good order. The one piece of equipment that had been refurbished was the engine. The ubiquitous Continental 0470 that has been used by Cessna in nearly all the early 182s had been zero-timed by Norvik and only had 46 hours on the clock. This was the decision maker, so I bought a zero-timed engine attached to an old but fully serviceable and original airframe. Before money exchanged hands, I had a full pre-buy inspection performed by my regular engineers. They found many small anomalies, but nothing that would make me walk away from the deal. After a small negotiation, a fair price was agreed upon. On the flight to the pre-buy inspector, it became obvious that the audio panel and/or the radio was malfunctioning. Communication with air traffic was only possible when very near the station, and then intermittent. I had an avionics guy take a look. He concluded that the original Cessna audio panel was malfunctioning and was uneconomical to repair. It would be cheaper and advisable to upgrade to a new unit. As my plan over the next few years was to slowly upgrade the whole panel to modern Garmin avionics, I started looking at my options. While I was doing this, and after a few more test flights in the non-radio controlled local area, I discovered a few more problems. The turn coordinator made a screaming noise. This turned out to be a bearing problem and needed refurbishing. The autopilot didn't seem to hold a heading, and after a little investigation, it turned out that in the past this unit had been disconnected and did nothing. No wonder it wouldn't hold a heading. I thought a sensible plan was to start the panel upgrade and allow for future improvements.
Stage 1 was to fit a Garmin GMA 345 audio panel,
along with removing the two old radio units. One was the original Cessna 25 MHz Navcom, which was useless as a com, but did operate the VOR, and the ICON that was 833 spacing, but didn't operate the second VOR. I replaced these with the Garmin GNC 255, a good Navcom unit that was fully compatible with the audio panel and had VOR localizer and glide slope indication capabilities. But it turned out that it was not compatible with the old VOR CDI in my Cessna, so a new CDI had to be fitted too. Luckily, the original King DME unit was fine and talked with the GNC 255. I also elected to change the transponder from a Trig TT31 to a Garmin GTX 335. I kept the Garmin Era 660 in the panel as a GPS backup to my usual iPad Sky Demon that I always fly with. I decided to also install two Garmin G5 units, one as the primary flight display and one as the directional indicator. This would allow me to remove the vacuum system, which would continue the upgrade process. The G5 is also required to drive the Garmin GMC 500 autopilot that I intended to fit in the future when finance is allowed. After several months spent performing the refit, I ended up with a usable plane. The airframe and engine anomalies had been sorted, along with the new instruments fitted and the zero-timed engine, all added up to make a fine plane. I then spent the next year flying my lovely 182 around the UK and Europe, all hand flying as no autopilot. I had left space in the centre panel for my dream additions to the avionics: a Garmin GTN 750XI Navcom GPS and a Garmin G500 autopilot controller. After hand flying for a year, I realised I really needed an autopilot for the long journeys I intended to fly. I started researching the GTN 750 and G507 autopilot, but I discovered that you can only purchase these units and have them fitted through a registered and licensed Garmin dealer. In my area of South England, I discovered 3 avionics shops that were recommended. One of the outfits met with me, discussed the plane and options at length, drew up some panel ideas, and we actually had a second meeting to offer up scale-sized images of the equipment to make sure it would fit as we wanted. I also really liked the engineers and thought that if I'm going to spend a large amount of time and money with these people, I wanted to be able to communicate and work with the engineers to achieve the outcome I desired. And so I thought we could now get going. Nothing is ever that simple. Garmin were giving a 9-month lead time on the GTN 750XI, and the other equipment had to be ordered too. With the actual refit taking 2 to 3 months after all the equipment had arrived, I was looking at a 1-year time frame to completion from the moment I put a deposit down. During my conversations with the engineers, I expressed my desire to have a full engine monitoring system. On previous planes, having full knowledge of the CHTs, EGTs and fuel flow made a real difference to leaning and cross-country planning. I was looking at products from JPI and Garmin. It was suggested I look at the Garmin G3X primary flight display, as this would talk with the Garmin GTN 750, the GNC 255 nav radio and the autopilot, but more importantly, it also had the ability to display a 6-cylinder engine management system monitor, negating the need for a standalone engine monitor system screen. Although this panel upgrade was now getting out of hand, I was only ever going to perform this upgrade once, and then my intention was to fly the socks off this plane for the foreseeable future. A new plan had hatched. I put the order in for the GTN 750XI and GMC 507 autopilot with the servos and the G3X screen, plus a 6-cylinder engine monitoring kit. With other ancillary equipment, this order form filled 3 pages of A4. I had also decided to have an iPad mount fitted to the right-hand co-pilot's panel, as even with all this amazing Garmin technology, I really wanted Sky Demon there too. The avionics engineers would have to fit 2 additional switches to my yoke, one for the electric trim and one for the autopilot disconnect. Discussions were made, suggesting adding a metal plate and running wires out of the new panel face. I was not happy with this idea, as after investing so much thought and effort into creating a new clean panel, I didn't want wires and screwed-on metal plates upsetting the aesthetics of the new panel. I researched new yokes for a Cessna 182. There were no new ones on the Cessna website. After much web exploration, I discovered Avion Research. The Cessna yoke they manufacture can also accommodate the Signet trim switch, which is much more desirable than the toggle switch supplied by Garmin. The new yokes also had wiring channels to accommodate all the additional cabling, allowing for the wires to travel down the yoke column. I ordered a pair of new yokes from Avion and a trim switch from Signet Aerospace. Although another unexpected expense, I am so glad I ordered these, as it has added a great deal to the new look. The Bendix King KN64 DME was probably 25 years old. The team resprayed the fascia to rejuvenate it, but the lens was delaminated and let the unit down. I managed to find a new lens in the USA. It has made the DME unit look part of the new instruments. I regularly visited the avionics engineering hangar to make decisions and discuss final positioning, choosing the exact location for all the screens, switches, panels and breakers. The new fascia panels were only cut after much deliberation, and the engineers spent many hours wiring all the necessary sensors and servos. I am very happy with the new panel and the way the engineers approached and executed this very complicated and detailed refurbishment. I can't thank them enough. The original interior was old and brown with threadbare carpet and stained plastic. During my initial discussions with the engineers, they advised that the sequence of events should be first the panel upgrade, then the interior, and then the exterior. I decided on the fawn leather and saddle brown-green carpet. Once the avionic engineers had finished their installation and testing, I gave them the go-ahead to bring all the newly made seats and interior fitments back to the hangar and reinstall. So now I have an amazing Cessna 182Q with state-of-the-art avionics, ready for any cross-country journey, and a beautifully comfortable interior that impresses any passenger I take up. To complete the refurbishment program, I decided to have new paint, so the plane was sent away to have a bare metal respray. At the same time, I decided to change the name of the plane to Golf Delta Alpha November Oscar. I chose a scheme that was white and orange to the design of the original 1970s Cessnas. I hope you liked the result. My name is Dan from Gin Clear Aviation. Please subscribe and like below, as this helps us make more video footage. Safe flying!